Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So I think welcome everybody. I'm hoping a lot of others will join in soon as well. I'm just going to quickly go to full screen. Yeah. Hopefully this is visible to you guys, right?
Yep.
Good, brilliant. So we want to keep this very, very informative. We want to keep it very interactive as well. So feel free to ask me anytime you need to understand something or something which is not clear, perhaps, right? So firstly, welcome. Let me introduce myself. My name is Konark. I'm one of the directors at Rural Handmade, which is a very tech-enabled B2B marketplace business we have, where we try and connect small communities of creative manufacturers to just sort of different global small businesses. In a single line, we're trying to redefine supply chain and also help small businesses really capture the exact same supply chain that the big companies have. So welcome on board. Now, before I get into what the presentation would look like, I'm going to just quickly talk about these 5 Ds, right, which we will kind of demystify in a way and understand each of them, right? And this is going to be all the way from starting off an idea and all the way to finally delivering the products that we have commissioned. Right? So design thinking, obviously, a lot of you guys in the creative business are experts, definitely better than I am. Then we go about deconstructing. How does anybody commission design? How does a design really get made? And we're going to restrict ourselves to the handmade industry because that's what we specialize in. So really using basic tools and then a lot of human capital. The third one is going to be really talking about business models. Now, from what I understand, a lot of creatives find it very difficult to sell products, right? So we're going to take some inspirations and really understand how do you actually become a brand, how do you actually become a business, and then how do you sustain yourself with just different set of business models. Then we have like deals. How do you find clients, right? And what are the exact deals that you'll be working on, and how do you actually create a value proposition? The final one was going to be delivery, which is going to be a lot about logistics. Like how does packaging work? How does quality control of the packaging works and different processes and standards? And then we're going to do a very brief overview about export, look at the invoices, look at different terms that are related with shipping. It's important for you to keep in mind because we are a global supply chain business, and I think we would like you to educate about what is the meaning of just moving things from point A to point B. So let's do the design thinking part. Now, I wouldn't really want to teach you this because, as I said, you guys are an expert about design thinking. But fundamentally, this is a chart that really defines what we do. Right? So you understand the problem. You then formulate a brief about the design problem. It could be anything. It could be how to improve the office chair that I'm sitting on. It could be how to build a better study table for offices, for homes. So literally could be any problem. And then you go about doing research. Now, the whole idea about doing research is to really make use of the education you've had, is to make use of internet, make use of YouTube, research papers and stuff, which is very critical because we want to add on to the existing knowledge rather than completely creating something from new. So primary research and secondary research are critical whenever you're talking about any sort of design thinking process. And then you go about ideating it, right? So it's really going to the next stage of then you start talking to users, sketching designs, going back and looking at raw materials, just different set of things. The other one would be then you just create designs, commission different ideas, right? So again, till now you're only talking about sketches, right? So you've come all the way from a design problem to really now commissioning sketches on a 2D sort of a paper, and then you talk about prototypes, which is like, okay, I've built it, I know the dimensions, I have the CAD, I have the graph, I have everything I need to do need for making the product, and then you go about formalizing the first product. Sampling is the word that is normally used in this industry, right? So this is a brief about design thinking. Now, this is a very good example of really what a design thinking and what a product would look like, right? So this is an iconic design, the hairpin leg design, which was basically created by Henry. And what it was really is during the World War time, the supply chain was an issue, very similar to COVID times, where people didn't have a lot of money and they wanted to optimize the use of raw material, keep it minimalistic. And this is where I think a similar analogy is biomimicry. So people say, what, there is a hairpin, which is a very minimalistic sort of use of a raw material, which is steel or whatever, iron. And then how can you add this and make it into a functional product? So these two designs still remain iconic designs, right? And this is a fine use of design thinking. Minimalism to begin with because of hardships during the World War, and then how to create a function out of something like that. So as you can see in this one, very, very minimalistic in terms of the use of raw materials. Right, so still remains an iconic design and has been for ages now. Now, a good example that I want to give you guys is about brand values, right? And why is it important at the initial stage to really keep in mind what does a brand mean to you? Now, for us, it means a lot of things, and we have explicitly mentioned about the values we care about. So I'm not going to go through all of them, but really is about trying to create a product which is exactly what a consumer would want to buy based on different set of things that the customer cares about. So customer cares about fair wages. Customer cares about, is it recyclable? Customer cares about, does it make the supply chain better? Does it use all sorts of eco-friendly product? Does it include low carbon footprint raw materials? Does it include natural dyes? Does it include keeping the heritage alive? Does it really create any sort of positive impact, economically, socially? So all of this is very important for you guys as well to keep in mind, because this is going to be an intrinsic component of the story that you tell to the businesses you interact with, to the customers you interact with. Now, another very important component is the choice of raw materials. Now, man-made fiber, which is the polyesters and the nylons and everything else that we have, is great in a way that it really made things accessible to a lot of people. But as we come post-COVID, where the consumer is like, I want to buy less and I want to optimize what I'm buying, how can we now redefine the supply chain with this sort of raw material, which is from the ecosystem that we live in and is all natural? So you can see a bunch of different raw materials we have that we use at our business, which is all very sustainable, all very natural. And the nature replenishes a lot of it, right? So we don't have to suck the system, but rather replenished in a way. A very good example of a modern day business is Allbirds, which is a phenomenal business in many ways, but they have redefined the way shoes are made. And all of their shoes are really made using very sustainable sort of merino wool, or wool from New Zealand, the sheep of New Zealand, which are very famous. And so that really is how you can actually disrupt this whole supply chain. So a good example, I would say, urge you guys to go and read about them. And they have disrupted the likes of the Nikes, the Adidas, and all the big brands, right? Which have traditionally always used polyester, which is man-made fiber or raw material processed into things that we wear, essentially. Obviously that forms part of clothing as well. So keep in mind, just a quick recap. Brand value is a very important core or the brain of your brand, and you've got to really have a very deep and a clear understanding of what it is, and then you also explain this to the buyers and the people you interact with. Now, the current problems that we have in the world that we live in is that everybody talks about sustainability, right? So you go and say, oh, this is sustainable, right? But then when you go and do a deeper dive, the word sustainability isn't really as clear to a lot of people. Now, back in those days, everything was standardized. Weights were standardized, like the speed limit you have on the roadways is standardized, right? The dimensions are standardized. But sustainability isn't really standardized, but people are working on it. There are companies trying to come out with carbon footprint. We've written very interesting blogs about how do we calculate our carbon footprint. But fundamentally, three things remain vital and essential component of sustainability: social, which is the people who are in the supply chain, all the way from top to bottom. How do they benefit from this new process? The environment, which is, are you using the right set of raw materials, right? What happens to the products that are wasted, like the cut-offs? What happens to them? Do you recycle them? Right? So that's very important as well. And the final one is the economic part, which is, and there are two aspects of economic. One is you can make a $10,000 jeans, but and you could be all sustainable, but that's not creating an economic impetus for you to buy one, because only 0.001% people have the purchasing power to buy a $10,000 jeans, right? On the other hand, a jean also cannot be made in £1 or $1, because that clearly means you're exploiting the system. So how do you now create a supply chain where you have an economic case which benefits the society at large? Right? And this is the most trivial part of creating sustainability that we want or we aspire to become. And really the essence of this is really impact. How would you, knowing all the things that you're doing, come out and measure them, and then you showcase different businesses? And again, there's a lot of things happening here. I think there's a strong push by the governments and the private players to really standardize a lot of it, right? And I'm going to talk about it in detail as we further speak about the presentation. Now, a good example and also an opportunity for a lot of creatives, which are you guys, small businesses, like small creative businesses. A study done by Business of Fashion, which is quite an extensive, they tried to create a benchmark, and they analyzed over 200 brands and ranked all of them based on different components, right? So transparency, emissions that they're creating, water and chemicals they're using, materials, choice of materials, man-made versus organic, the workers' right and waste. Now, if you had to create a business today, right? And again, I want this to be more interactive as well. I would want to ask you guys, and anybody can chime in. Could you tell me which component would you start with? What will be your focus if you're trying to build a brand today, looking at this chart? I know some of you guys are shy, but just give it a shot.
Transparency.
Right, that could be a good one. Well, all of them are actually very poorly rated, by the way. Anybody else?
I would say transparency as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of this is really like, in technical terms, this is either a D or an E for all the business giants, essentially, right? And absolutely, I would say transparency is a core problem to solve. But if I was out to build a brand today, I would start with waste and workers' right, because a lot of big brands are actually doing an F as far as managing waste and workers' right is concerned, right? Why waste management? As you can imagine, a clothing industry, for example, produces 100 billion clothes. There are only like 7 billion of us that live on the planet, right? So what are they doing with it? What are they doing with this excess produce? Nothing. Ends up in landfill. Right? The other is a workers' right. We all know how deeply notorious the supply chain as far as workers' right is concerned. Right. So if you were to build a brand, these are bigger problems to solve, and you could start by saying, you know what, I'm going to create a fair trade salary system where I'm going to actually showcase how much my workers are getting. I'm going to tell people what I'm doing with my waste. I'm going to keep it nice and open. So you really are trying to, educate and also empower people, saying these are the biggest challenges in the industry, and I'm going to take this head on. And of course, you could, also do transparency and emissions, which is obviously, a bigger problem to solve as well. So keep in mind, identifying the niche is very critical for any brand, and you have to identify the niche, which goes back to the design thinking as well. Right? Design thinking is the core of the brand that you're trying to build. Guys, anything you want me to take you over on till now? I will take that as a no. So I will go to the next D, which is deconstructing commission designs. Like, what does it really mean? What does it mean to commission design? And so really it is as simple as it looks on this slide, which is you've identified the problem, and then you have done your primary research, your secondary research, You've talked to the users. Is this a viable problem to solve? And then you start sketching, right? The next stage is creating a 2D, an AutoCAD or a CAD or any software that you use to create the product, right? Because when you have a technical pack ready, that's when you start communicating with the small scale manufacturers, right? This is the dimension, this is the choice of raw material, and that's how I want it to be done. The stage 3 is then the manufacturer will say, okay, you said you want vegan leather, you said you want recyclable wood, you said you need recyclable aluminum as a frame, a metallic frame. So I'm going to get you all of that. And then finally is fixing, shaping, cleaning, and doing all that you need for making the furniture. And then you can sell this to, obviously delivery involved, and then you sell this to the customers or businesses, right? So this is a very basic overview. So I'm going to give you some real examples now. So, so this is one of the chairs. Again, the problem was, how can office chairs use minimalistic sort of, when I say office chairs, I mean, this is like conference tables and chairs, right? So this is chairs for conferences and for larger audiences. How can you keep it simple, use minimalistic set of raw material? And so the design guy would craft different concepts. As you can see, there are 6 concepts we've created and said, okay, let's try and finalize. And there's a bunch of iterations within the team. And then you make an AutoCAD or a simple illustration, and then the AutoCAD, and then you finally have the chair, which is what you see at the bottom, right? Again, a very similar use of what we've seen in the hairpin design, where it was the optimizing the raw materials we had. The next one is a more of a CAD version, which is you saw something and you say, like, you know what, let me just create this with the right dimensions. So you input the dimensions of the product, and then you really have it ready in a physical form. This is another example, a site table, which is the brief was about using sustainable and a more luxurious sort of feel product. So we used green marble, we used a gold electroplating on it, and using obviously iron as a base of the legs. And then, as you can see, we have a design into a CAD, and then we created the product out of it. Another example would be the side table. Exactly the same thing. You could talk about using different Pantone colors, different types of finishing that you need onto the product. With the dimensions, talk about the front view, rear view, top view, side view, isometric view, and then you can literally have the product up and ready. So this one isn't really a very complex problem, as long as you know what your dimensions are and the choice of your raw materials. You could create as many different variations of furniture in this case. Another example would be of making rugs, which is something we really specialize in. Now, obviously, there's a rug making which is mass produced in bigger factories, right? Which is a very different ball game. But this one is really about handmade rugs, right? So hand knotted rugs that you see, sold by all different brands all across the world. Really starts off by understanding again what colors do you want to blend in, right? So then you can use organic, natural dyes to then color the yarn. It could be yarn could be made from at least 2 dozen variations of raw materials, silk, cotton, wool. Wool has about a dozen varieties in itself. Different sort of raw materials you can use, and then you can as you can see, this is the creation process. Then you create a graph paper or something called as a 2D image, which just shows how the weaving is going to happen, right, on a simple piece of paper. Then you print it out, and then from there it goes on to a loom, and then the artisans, as you can see in this bottom part, which is how they're creating they're using each and every color and the yarn to make the carpet from top to bottom. It could take you anything between a week to 6 months to make a carpet. And key things to keep in mind is, raw materials. What is the knot density? So how many knots are you putting onto the carpet? And as you can see from the image on the top, which is the CAD that we had, we've converted this into a physical carpet, which is undergoing cleaning right now. So very interesting space, because everybody right now is looking at this one-off personalized sort of a solution for their homes. And I think rugs could really bring that value into every home and office that you can imagine. Lighting, again, very similar. You have just a different set of ideas and colors, and then what raw materials you need, brass, aluminium, and then you can create as many variations. So as simple as it looks like. Every big business follows exactly the same process. Raw materials, colors, choices of the designs, and then we can help you really recreate this into physical products. A quick summary of what we've seen. It's important for you to keep in mind that you have to understand the mission and the vision of the problem, or the buyer, or the client, or the business, or the customer, because the design space is very competitive, and if you don't understand it, it's going to be a bit difficult. Markets, right? I know that a lot of the audience right now in the call is in the Middle East. So you really have to understand the persona of the Middle Eastern market. Like, what do they care about? What designs excite them? Which is, again, a part of the culture as well. A competitive edge, I would say, keep in mind, if you are trying to come out with a generic product, the lifespan of the success of the business is going to be very small, because you don't have the value addition into the process, and gradually people will move on to a different business. That's how harsh the reality is. You got to really understand the strengths and weaknesses of your business as well, because focus more on your strengths, which could be anything to do with supply chain. It could be to do with your brand values. It could be to do with your designs, which is like one of a kind. And then again, reiterate the aims and challenges that you're trying to achieve and address. Always be aspirational in the problems you're trying to solve, because that's what makes creative businesses very exciting. And it's just like any other branding project, you need to know a lot about the entire process, right? So this is again very, very critical. So guys, please feel free to ask me if the pace is a bit fast. I can slow down. If you want me to repeat something, I'm more than happy to do it as well. So any doubts, guys?
Konark, I just have a question about the selection of the raw material, and how can the young designers and creatives, understand the price point of, in the process of selecting the raw material.
Right. So I have a few things to do with pricing, but fundamentally there are 3 or 4 components that revolves around pricing. So if you look at, let's say, this design, talk about this design. Now, this exact design can be made in the US, in Europe, in Asia, in the Far East, even in the Middle East. They have, these small units that can make them. Now, as you can imagine, if it is in the US, it's going to be very expensive, just the way, because the whole ecosystem works a bit differently. Exactly the same thing with Europe. With Asia, it can get a bit cheaper, but depending on the markets you're in, right? So let's say you talk about China. China isn't really for small businesses, because the amount of customization that you would need would not be catered by Chinese market. Rather, what you can do with China is perhaps pick up what they have in stock for a really low price, and then you could sell it off, which is exactly what every big company is doing right now, if you think about it. The other approach is to look at, let's say, Vietnam and Indonesia, which is a lot more flexible. But keep in mind that the Vietnamese and the Indonesian labor market is not as cheap as maybe perhaps India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. So it can get a bit expensive, and there is a commitment of amount of money that they would need from you. And all these different countries specialize in different sort of raw materials. Right? So China is obviously very well known for man-made, any form of man-made raw material. Right? So you talk about any form of polyester, PU, which is polyester again, into fabric, heavy mechanized metalwork, iron and steel and aluminum. You come to Indonesia, especially in the interior design space, there's a lot of use of cane and bamboo. Vietnam also uses a lot of cane and bamboo, does a lot with leather also now. India, Bangladesh, Nepal, Pakistan has again a mix of everything in a sense. They do lower quantities, and you can actually innovate to whatever levels you want to, right? I think so. So just to quickly summarize, the level of innovation can become really high if you travel far east. So all the way from Indian subcontinent to Far East, if you're looking at having higher margins, and you are actually fine with creating small batches, I would say this is the right supply chain. But if you want to actually sell in huge volumes and you're looking at quickly selling things at rock bottom, have that gap of margins, I would say China does a great job with that. In Europe, personalization and customization can be very expensive. And I say very expensive, it's not for you guys, essentially. A lot of times manufacturers don't want to uh, add any new form of designs. They have their existing catalogs, they have their existing designs. They launch about 100 to 200 designs every single season, and you have to pick from that. And the prices could vary. For example, something like this in Europe could cost you between, I would say, 1,000 euros all the way to 10,000 euros. Again, depends on where exactly is it made. Poland, Portugal, Spain, or is it Italy? Very expensive. At least I would say at least 3 to 7 times more expensive than you would have this in Asia. Right. Again, I think the world we live in, the country of origin makes a big difference. It is the way the life, the way the world really works right now. And so a lot of interior design work is done in Europe, and very high quality craftsmanship. But I wouldn't really say this is for you guys. Well, at least the majority of the people who are in the call and who are a part of the iDesign Club. So, and in terms of the raw materials, as I said, every country has their own unique value proposition. So Italy obviously does a lot of marble, a lot of leather, a lot of sustainable sort of wood as well. You go to Indonesia, there's a lot of bamboo and cane. Then you come to Vietnam, a lot of leather. So a lot of footwears are made in Vietnam, for example. And then there's a lot of other similar, bamboo and wooden furnitures that you have. The Indian subcontinent does, again, a mix of different things because it's a hugely populated countries. And so they do everything from marble to metal to leather. So yeah, I mean, choice of raw materials really is up to you. And with the globalization, I think we don't have this problem where you wouldn't really find a raw material in a specific place. For example, a lot of Chinese businesses import, tons and tons of marble from the Indian subcontinent to make exactly stuff that you see right in front of you. Right? So they don't have it, but because of globalization, they get the raw materials, and they have all the know-hows to then create these sort of products for different businesses. So, is that good enough, Hassan?
Yeah, sure. I think the question of quality comes here because it would be the decision of the designer, or a set of decisions actually that they would like to take in terms of quality or the marketing approach they want to do. So how they would, do the quality control or make sure that the quality of the product commissioned is good for their clients. This would be another question as well.
Yeah. So I'm going to actually talk in detail about all of this, and I think let me just quickly move on to the presentation, and then I think a lot of these answers are going to be solved as we kind of discuss these things as well. So, yeah. So, but a brief answer to it is that at the end of the day, if you want to become a brand or be a business, you have to pick and choose what is the best fit for you. Right? So, if you want something which is highly luxurious and you have a lot of money, close your eyes, go to Europe, right? Go to the US, right? But if you have tight on money and you have very limited budget, you've got to really do a deep dive into, okay, where do I make my things? So I make this in Nepal, do you make this in Sri Lanka, India, Vietnam, Indonesia? So you have to do the due diligence. And then it's a process, right? So every day you're learning something new. And we as a business can come and help you with supply chain. Right, we're more than happy to have a call with you, really understand what your needs are, and try and find you the best solution. We've got a global supply chain at the business, and we're more than happy to answer any specific queries you guys have. So let me go back to business models. Now, this is going to be very interesting and also very important because my whole effort in this part of the presentation is going to be talking about what a company is doing. How do you optimize and make best use of your cash flow, right, which is the money you have in the account. So the first thing to do is always find a niche. Now, when I say find a niche, if you want to come and sell tables and chairs, right, and maybe in your free time, do this exercise, go online, type tables and chairs. I can tell you with a lot of certainty that for you to rank on any of these Bings and the Googles of the world, the chances of you coming the first page are very little because of one single thing, which is brand value. You're not a brand at this stage. So you've got to really look into how do you find a niche that you're trying to come out with, and how do you actually solve the problem. Now, how do you find a niche? So giving similar examples, if you type tables and chairs, everybody else that you can imagine, in the Middle East, retailers are selling tables and chairs made in China, Vietnam, and India, and whatever. Then you have the other example, which is recycled chair made from oak wood, right? Which is exactly what you do as a business. Now, it's definitely a lot easier to rank for that keyword because big companies are not doing recycled. You are. That's your niche, right? Now, and do this over and over again, right? So that's where we've written, find a niche and provide a bigger value, which is 2x, 3x, 5x, 10x. If you can add that value, and then again, this is to optimize your own efforts on the internet because you would not rank for tables and chairs. So you need to figure out what you want to rank for, and you start creating value, and then you start creating the products for your customers or the businesses you work with. A big part of adding value is design intervention, right? So if there's no design intervention, the lifespan of your business is going to be very small. So keep that in mind. Third part, which I think is very important, I think for especially for creative businesses, is personalization. If there is no personalization, which means you are drop shipping products from part A to part B, very difficult for you to survive in long term. Very difficult to build a brand in long term, right? So think about how can you personalize. Think about the needs and expectations of the business you're interacting with, or the people you're interacting with. And then I would say finally is building a supply chain which is sustainable. Now, we've talked about supply chain, we talked about sustainability. So you've got to be very mindful that you are truly building a sustainable supply chain. And all these components, which is number 2, number 3, and number 4, are a part of adding one more X onto your brand, right? So quick summary, try and stay lean, don't overcomplicate things. A lot of things are very simple, right? Recycled, reclaimed, equal opportunity, fair wages, all of these things can help you add value onto your brand and to your business and then eventually to your product. Scale the process, which means once you've learned what the supply chain is like, then you always are looking at scaling it. I'm going to talk about how to do that as well. And then source, there's a lot of global communities that can help you with really creating these different set of products. And always think of that you are a brand and you have an advantage, a competitive advantage, and try and make use of it. How to manage inventory. Okay, now this is one of the examples that I'm showing you how to manage or how to do a business case essentially. So it's a very big brand in the UK. It's called Soon Editions. What they've done is they've said, okay, I've got these designs. They of course haven't manufactured a lot of them, but they've designed them, which means they have created samples out of it, which you guys can do all the time, right? And it doesn't necessarily have to be a physical product. It can also be a nice looking 3D sort of a model. And then if you look at the left-hand side and look at the delivery, like this is literally taken last week. So the deliveries vary all the way from 1 to 2 weeks, all the way to May. And May from now is literally about 6 months away for all practical purposes. So you're thinking, oh, why are they doing this? And how does it make a difference? The answer is very simple. They're optimizing cash flow, right? So they have a product ready. So they've probably invested, let's say, $500 into one product or whatever, $200. And they've said, you know what, there you go. It's not very expensive. It's obviously one of a kind. It's highly customized. And we're only going to make 50 or 100 pieces out of it. So if you want to go and book now, and if you want to be patient, go for it. And I think this strategy is now ever so increasingly is being used by all the different retailers and businesses I've seen. A lot of this is also fueled because of COVID, but for any small business, I would say this is a great opportunity to really, excite the audiences about what you're trying to create, which I think a lot of young people are very good at. Social awareness is one of the key strengths we have seen, and try and optimize it, try and exploit that part of creating a sort of a FOMO effect or create a branding effect, and then get pre-orders. Simple as that. The other business model is, which is quite intuitive, very simple as well, by the way, which is like, for example, sofas, right? So let's say you open up a sofa business, or you already have one, you create the frame. You create the basic frames of 2 pieces and 5 pieces or 6 pieces or 6 sofa seats. And then as you get an order, you give a choice to the buyer and say, what colors would you need, right? If you create a sofa, 80% work is literally creating the frame, which you can see at the bottom, right? The rest 20% is then upholstery, which is putting the right fabric onto the sofa, right? What this does is, obviously, once you get money in, you can then start, putting the fabric on top of the sofa. Saves you 70, 80% of the time. You don't have to create a lot of stock. Similar sort of stocks could be made available for other businesses, so you can manage your cash flow, and you're personalizing, right? So you're really personalizing according to the needs of the businesses or the people you work with. So this is something that I think you guys can definitely have a look into. The other strategy is really an artistic made to order or a print on demand service, right? So similar things with, for example, tables, right? Or wardrobes. So you create basic ingredients of the table or the wardrobe, which could be like, let's say you create a slab 4 meter by 2 meter, 6 meter by 3 meter, 7 meters by 2.5 meters, standard sizes. And then you create legs. And as you get the order, you can then fit in. So again, you're optimizing time. You are, adding value, because you're selling this as a customizable sort of a furniture, right? And similar variations, you can choose different woods, you can create different designs, so you can mix and match resin with wood. There's so many combinations you can actually come out with. Very similar to wardrobes. So if you want to create a series of different designs, you can do that, and then you can obviously get, it's like a plug and play model, right? So you can plug more or remove some of the other sections of it. So this is something which is becoming increasingly popular now, right? I think customization, made to order, more of a print on demand sort of in the artistic space. And a handmade space is beautifully poised to actually create these small batches for you guys. Because as I said, you can actually create the basic sort of raw materials, and then you can get the orders and then ship them individually. Can't emphasize enough, I'm a big fan of personalization, and look around, all the big companies are doing it. They give you a few images to choose from, and then you say, I like image 5, 7, 12, 15, 19, 31. And then once they know who you are, they then say, what, you are more likely to buy modern products, and then you're also, partially likely to buy Scandinavian designs, right? And then you come out with different combinations of products you have. Right? So you can offer them that we recommend you buying these things. Now, how could you do it in a non-tech way? It's very simple. Talk to the users, understand what the needs are. All right, go and physically meet them, understand their entire life cycle of thought process. And then you say, you like minimalistic, go for Scandinavian. These are the designs that we have. Right? So it's really understand the users, by the way, and then that will really help you to create these really interesting sort of products for your buyers. Another very simple example, by the way, right? So there are 2 components really on this floor lamp, right? The head, which is the lantern or the made from a fabric, and then the tail, which is nothing but the tripod. All that this business has done is said, these are standard products. I can actually replace the fabric with whatever I need, because some people like bright colors, Others like simpler, subtle colors. Like in the Middle East, a lot of handwork is needed in the products. In Europe, it's more minimalistic that is more popular. So what they've done is really exactly the same thing. Said, you know what, there are different lampshades that fit in the exact same tail, right? So they can produce the head separately in whatever quantity, whatever colors they need. They can produce the tail separately. But really, you can mix and match. You can plug and play the same thing. So think of standardization as well as a way of personalization. Really works really very well with cash flow. Very, very well with cash flow. So you can 5 designs. So it's like a multiple, right? So you've got 5 into 5, 25 variations of the product. Whereas in reality, you only have 5 products, but because you have combinations of 2 of them, you were creating multiple combinations and multiple designs, for that say. So a really smart way to kind of manage cash flow. Any doubts till now, guys? Feel free to ask me. It's very informal. I want to actually learn from you guys of the struggles you have, and this is just a way of kind of educating you. But I'm more than happy to, if you have any specific problems till now. Okay, I was told you guys are a bit shy. But that's fine. I mean, I'm always available offline. The team is there as well. So happy to speak to you individually. Now let's have a look at the pricing. And again, the process of how does the manufacturer really do the pricing is very, very critical, because eventually when you negotiate prices, you need to be mindful on how does this really work, right? So this is a real example. It's a real sheet, and exactly how it should be in any other form. So manufacturers, as you can imagine, are very busy manufacturing, right? And their unit economics is very simple. They make a product, they understand what the costs of the product is going to be. And with Handmade, it's fairly simple, right? If you look at small nanoscale factories in Europe, also in Asia, it really is like a 3,000 square feet or 10,000 square feet space. They have basic machines, and then they have human hands to really make the product, right? Simple as that. So this product, if you start from this part, which is the picture, so this is really a side stand, really made from, in this case, it's made from iron, right? Because I know it is written here. So first of all, what you do is you look at the sizes. So this is obviously in inches. That's a total weight. Now, why do we need weight? Because the raw material that you're buying this for has a dollar notion to it. So it's going to be, say, $2 a kg or $3 a kg. So you need to know what the weight is. And this is how you calculate the prices of the raw material. Now, depending on the type of metal, as you guys know, brass is expensive, aluminum is not as expensive, iron is the cheaper of all of them, among all of them, right? So you need to know what raw materials you're using. Again, going back to the brand values and the choice of raw materials. This is the rate. Well, all of this is in Indian rupees. So INR, which is about £1 is about 100 rupees. I think $1 is about 77 rupees. So this is roughly $2. That's the rate per kg of the iron. So this is the total rate of the raw material. So it's very simple unit economics. You look at the raw material, you multiply the cost of the raw material, and that's how you know the prices. Then is the finish. Now, finish is basically how do you want the product to look like? Luxurious, semi-luxurious. So there's a different way of creating a finish around it. So electroplating, normal polishing, fouling, enamel, different forms of things. So in this case, that is what the cost is of the polish and the PC. So the total cost is 100 plus 150. So it's 1.5 pounds or $2 roughly. So till now you spent about close to 11 pounds plus 1.5 pounds, right? Now, this one is nothing but packaging. And we'll talk more about this in the next slide, which is really what is the cost of organizing this in the right manner so that it can easily be shipped from point A to point B. And LP and MP is just nothing but these are cartons, different cartons. So this will go into a carton, a corrugated box, and then it goes into a bigger corrugated box where you can actually pack 10 or 15 of them, right? The CBM is the volume. So it's very important for you guys to keep in mind that the volume is very important for you to keep in mind to understand the shipping implications, right? So a cubic meter is like a 1 meter by 1 meter by 1 meter. And so this is 0.2 cubic meter in terms of volume. And we'll talk about the pricing as well, on how does the volume really work. It can be a bit overwhelming, the slide, but really it's all about doing adding different things from point A to point B. So the cost of one piece is 382, as you can see, by adding all these different components. But this is packaging and forwarding. So this is a cost that is not including the raw materials and finishing, but this is the cost of packaging and delivering this to the warehouse or to the ship. The next one is, again, this the slide now moves on to the right-hand side. So you can see this was the cost of the packaging and forwarding. The raw material was about 12, 13 pounds, or about, whatever, $20, $25. And then this is the total amount of money, 915 plus whatever, 1200. So the total grand total of this one single product is about 21 pounds or 2100 rupees, or roughly, I would say a good 25 to $30. That's the cost. Now this N% and C% is nothing but what is the commission of the business. So the businesses would take a good 60% of this, right? It's going to be 1,300 rupees or 13 pounds. So if you're a manufacturer, the way you do things is you do this is you say, okay, I've created this, but I have a lot of overheads. I have expenses in the factory. I have people to pay wages for, and so many other things. So he's come out with a 60% margin on the product, right? So it's 1,300, and 6% is, there are different agents or freight forwarders or quality control inspectors who actually help you, manage the entire communication with the buyer and stuff. So their commission is about 6%, which is about 2 pounds. So in totality, eventually the product would come out to be $55. Now, $55 is not very expensive if you can think about it, right? That's the cost of one product. And if you scale this to 100, then obviously, things are a bit different. Then you are spending about $5,000 just to create hundreds of these, right? And then very similar to everything else that you do in this one. So this is how you would see manufacturers calculating costs. Now, very important and also very simple. So it's a cost of the raw material, packaging process, the process that is involved in creating the product, and then you add your markup or your commission, and then you sell it off to any big business. Now, this business essentially supplies to Made.com, Soon Editions, all the big companies you can imagine of the world. The John Lewis's, the Walmarts, and all that. Cool. Any doubts on this one, guys? Anything that you want me to kind of redo with you? Okay, so just a quick summary. So we looked at the cost of raw materials, the type of finishing that is needed, right? And then we looked at the cost of packaging and forwarding, which is forwarding means moving products from point A to the end destination in the UK, in Dubai, London, wherever you are. And then you add your commission, and this is the cost that you normally share with the clients. Now, for you guys, this number could be, in the similar sort of a range, but you could then sell this to whatever price you need. And I'm going to talk about pricing now, which is, again, I think what Hassan had, was asking me initially about how do you determine prices. Now, there's no definitive way to determine prices, but the way I would like to put this is, I would like to put this as an equation. And I would say price is a function of the level of design intervention you bring in, the country of origin, the brand values that you are trying to stick to, because brand value, if you want to stick to a brand value, things can get a bit expensive, right? The impact you're creating, and I think economic, social, whatever form of impact you're creating, the volumes of things that you're buying, right? The choice of raw materials. You've seen, if you pick up brass, it's at least 10 times more expensive than picking up aluminium, right? Then you look at import duties. Now, luckily in the Middle East, I think a lot of countries don't have any form of import duties. But unfortunately in Europe, there's a good 20-25%. In the US, it depends, but it's between, I would say, a 3% to a 12-13%. So things can get expensive as you import products. Shipping modes, which means, are you air shipping this? Are you using sea? Changes the prices quite dramatically. Now, If you're selling things in Europe, it's a bit more standardized. So if you buy something from a factory or a small business, you can sell this. Let's say you buy this for 100. A 50% markup means that you're selling this for 200. So you're doubling it up. Now, at 250% markup is nothing but you multiply that by 2.5 times. So you're buying something for 100, and then you can sell this for 250 times of 100 essentially. So in Europe, usually the range of what you can make on a product which is already in Europe is between a 50% markup to a 250% markup. Now, for big companies, which are large companies like the Zara's, the Walmarts, the John Lewis's, and Wayfairs, and the Amazons, they keep a really high markup. And just to come back to the discussion we had, if you buy something from China, you can actually technically have such high markups between 250 to 700%, just because you have so many high running costs. Buying things in bulk, they are cheap per unit, but then you also have to spend a lot of money in marketing and sales. And so if you don't have high markups, you wouldn't really be profitable. So the concept of the EBITDA, which is your earnings before your income tax and amortization, you got to have high markups. There's a reason why the Chinese supply chain is very famous, because they actually give you very high markups. But it's not for you guys, by the way, because for that you need a huge credit line. You need bigger volumes, right? You need to import containers after containers in massive quantities. So it's definitely not for you guys. But this markups could be very lucrative, by the way. And I know for a fact, like a sideboard, which is something that you put your TV on, in Vietnam can cost you like $65, and you can easily sell this for $300, $400 in the UK. $60, can you imagine that? But I mean, a lot of businesses have huge expenses, right, just to sell that. So just be mindful. Now, what is it for you guys? What kind of selling prices can you have, or you can imagine? Again, it's very tricky, but I can tell you, if you follow the right process, if you do exactly what we've discussed till now, you can have a very high markup, which means you can buy something sticking to all the values for a price X, and you can easily sell this for 7X, between, I would say, 5 to 8X, quite comfortably. So you can beat the markups of the big companies, but you have to stick to the equation that we have at the top of this. So keep in mind, pricing is very subjective, and like really country of origins and raw materials and all of this makes a huge difference. Now, how do you find deals? I think really, I would say, think offline. All of you guys are, I'm assuming a lot of the audience is sitting in the Middle East. You have your local community, you have your local design businesses. Talk to them, go out, reach out to them. People say, online is great, but I would also tell that offline is equally good, especially now, because for a small business, nothing beats word of mouth. I was part of a community. I literally asked the same thing to all of them. Said, how are you finding new clients? And number one answer was word of mouth. and none of them actually are fancy websites. None of them actually know anything about internet. They all still live in the web 1.0. I know there's a talk right now about web 1.0, web 2.0, web 3.0. All of them literally still live in web 1.0. And so word of mouth, I think, is your biggest takeaway, and kind of just specialize in that, which brings me to optimizing first degree connections. Really, it's all about first degree connections. As you speak to people that you know of, you can really understand what the problems they're trying to solve, and then you can find a niche to offer a solution. Simple as that. Think of communities, and as I said, I think there are so many confederation associations, embassies. There's so many different communities, all trying to promote businesses. Local businesses trying to become global. Global businesses trying to become local. Right. So yeah, be nice. I think nothing beats being nicer. I mean, if you're a nice guy, a nice person, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. Most people will be happy to work with you. Impact, I think it was very, very important as well, especially as we move on to hopefully a post-COVID world. The kind of impact you're trying to create really is going to make a big difference between you and the competition. And then there are aggregators, right? There are marketplace businesses like Redbubble, Fiverr that can help you reach out to different clients, right? So all of these are very interesting communities of artists and creatives like you guys. Uh, a quick brief on personalization. I think it's very important for you to really understand uh, what are you trying to sell and who you're trying to sell this to, a business or a person, their goals and values, where do they get the information from, who do they roam around with, right? What are their objections in the buying process, what are their hurdles, what are the issues they have, and how do you find a craft solution for them, right? So it literally is all about matching the right demand to the supply. That's what we do as a business as well. Always trying to look at how can we understand the clients and the needs of the clients and then offer a solution to it. Now, I'll come to the last part, which is obviously, I would say, second last part, which is about delivery. Now, it can get a bit complicated, but to simply put in perspective, there are standards and procedures and systems in place, even including us, where we actually look at how to actually pack a product. And this is a product that's going to move from a factory, let's say in Nepal, and be delivered to a warehouse, let's say in Los Angeles. So there's a lot of exchange of hands between the last time it was packed to the opening up of the process. But the good news is there is hundreds of billions of pounds already being spent and is being spent every year to optimize the process, right? So this is an example of a community of different delivery partners called ISTA. They came out with standards. So they really talk about everything to do with any sort of test that will be needed for a product, right? So they do a bunch of different things like free fall test, compression test, impact test, rotary vibration test, different sort of things. And all they're trying to do in labs is simulate what a box goes through in the entire journey from a factory in Nepal to a warehouse and then eventually to the customer in Los Angeles, right? So how does it look like? It looks like this, right? And as you can see, all of this is nothing but things that can happen to a box as they're moving, right? They're dropping, there's a compression, there is obviously impacts on the edges, hundreds of things that happen to a box. But all of this is simulated, and then we come out and say, what, this is what we need as the packaging to look like. And so we as a business, like other businesses, will help you with this set of a problem. How to choose between sea and air? I would say for most small businesses, and I think obviously it depends on where you live, but if you live in the Middle East, I would say just bring it via sea. If it is more than 250 kgs and the volume is more than, I would say, 1 to 2 cbm, which is cubic meter, works really well if you're doing anything to do with home furnishing. Anything soft, ship it via air. Don't even think twice. If it is heavy, furnitures, lighting, high density products, sea is obviously the better choice. Again, I would say only when you have decent volumes, right? So at least a 2 or a 3 cbm, I would say ship it via sea. Again, delivery times, air is obviously much quicker. I would say 80% quicker than ocean. Keep in mind, just to give you a quick number, pre-COVID, the Chinese, like a 45 feet container cost was about $2,500. This is all the way from China to the US. You wouldn't believe it, but right now the cost is about $17,000, $18,000, $19,000, right? So it's gone up by like a good 10 times. And similarly, I think with the Indian subcontinent as well, I think it used to be in about the same price range. I would say a bit cheap, a little bit more expensive, maybe about 2,800, 3,000. It's gone to 8,000. So, shipping is a bit tricky right now. Hopefully, well, we have a new variant now, but hopefully it'll come back to being stabilized. So keep in mind, pricing can fluctuate quite dramatically, especially with these times. This looks like a very overwhelming website page, but really it's very simple. In technical terms, called Incoterms. Incoterms just means like, when you're actually moving things from point A to point B, there are standards and procedures, right? So X-Factory, FOB, the more common ones that you will keep hearing would be FOB, which is freight free on board or freight on board, which means that if you're making this in, let's say in Indonesia, the manufacturer will deliver everything, hand over everything to you at the port. So as soon as it lands on the ship, which is going to move the product, you become the legal owner of the product, right? For creatives, I think FOB and DDP, which is duty delivery paid, are the two most common things I have seen. DDP really is that you say, I'm very small, I don't know anything about customs, I know nothing about how to clear the products. Could you deliver it in my shop, which is, let's say if you're in Dubai. So the guy will say, okay, in that case, I'm going to actually charge you for everything, but I'm going to send you one invoice, which includes literally everything from packaging, handling, custom clearance, exporting, importing. And so if you come to the bottom, this is where you actually, with DDP, you pay as a buyer, you pay everything in one invoice, right? Globally, the more famous and the common payment terms are FOB, which means that the company is going to give it to the port, which is free on the board, which is on the vessel. As soon as the product reaches on the vessel, it's going to help with all the custom requirement and stuff. So have a look into it, and of course, we're happy to discuss more in detail if you want to go through it. This is a typical invoice, how it looks like. This is exactly how you will get it as well. So it has the name of who's the paying business. So this is a letter of credit given by a bank. That's the name of the business. This is YSC. The guy actually received the pre-carrier at New Delhi. Port of loading was Mumbai, and the destination was Jebel Ali, which is, I think, in Dubai. And country of origin is very important in the export invoice. The final destination is the UAE, is very important. And these are the payment terms. So 90 days credit. So the company is giving you a credit, which is how every big company functions. And this is the number of packaging, like 1.5 inch square rod. So this is probably giving some metal products. So this is the quantity, 2,000 pieces, unit price, $0.2, and so it's $400. So there's another one, same quantity, similar sort of prices, and then that's, so this is the way an invoice looks like. It's very similar to if you go and buy like an iPhone, right? So iPhone gives you an invoice, but this is an export invoice. So, and that's how it kind of looks like. Just very quickly, we don't want to make this into a selling sort of a proposition, but really what we are doing is exactly what you need as a creative. You need somebody where you can actually rely on in terms of supply chain. What we've seen and observed in the last few years is that because of internet penetration, because of the ill treatment of the big companies towards these smaller businesses and communities, they want to reach out. They want to say, you know what, I don't want to work with these really big companies. I'm more than happy to work and reach out to other small businesses and really, redefine new partnerships. So, I think that's where we come into picture. I think in the handmade space, there's a huge amount of upskilling needed as we further go into Southeast. And I think that's where we come into picture. So you've got a design idea, you got something in your mind, you're great at understanding what the buyers need in the area you live in, and we got a supply chain where we can actually help you create the ideas into products. We are tech driven. We believe in a disintermediation, which is keeping things very simple in terms of supply chain. And truly, this is what is going to redefine supply chain. So going to be this new sort of solution that all of us put together can provide to customers, which is making sustainability more accessible, affordable, more impactful. And really, it's about tapping into human capital. I think we've seen this with the rise of NFTs and the rise of non-big companies and the rise of consumers buying less for longer. And I think there's a huge market to really cash onto it. I can give you an example. When I was growing up, this is back in India, buying secondhand was a very normal thing. This is a very Asian thing as well. I would wear clothes of my elder brother, and this was the part of the sustainable culture historically I grew up in. And now in Europe, after 30 years, you see secondhand market has become like a $70-80 billion market. And who would have thought that you would buy secondhand clothes in 2021? I don't think so. I never thought of this to become a trend. But I think a lot of kudos to you guys, especially young people. I always admire young people because of this social drive they're bringing in. I'll buy a used one. I don't want to buy a new one. But again, going back to the very important part, which is you could only sell things that are actually well made. So I can't really sell something if I buy it for $1. No, in 3 washes, the product is already gone. So you've got to create really good product if you want to, be in the game for long term. All the secondhand clothes that you see are very made exceptionally well, and I think it's the same thing with everything else. Good stuff. Okay. Now, how do we do it? We've got something called as a 7P partnership, which is people at the core of the business, product, planet, partnership, performance, profit, and prosperity. Really what it is that human capital is at the core of the business, which is people. It's like you guys, communities we work with, the supply chain, create the right set of product, which is going to be great for the planet. And then we really form the partnerships between the 3Ps. Once you do that, add this with a bit of technology, and then you could perhaps then have the profits. If you have all the 5Ps in line, it would be profitable. And that's where we think we can create the sustainable, equitable prosperity for all of the stakeholders in the supply chain. I think, if you guys are really in this domain to create products, it's a great time to be in. I think there are 3 to 4 different components of it. One is internet penetration has really made it very easy to access this very notorious opaque supply chain. And you can reach out to different communities now with just WhatsApp, as simple as it sounds. Really, WhatsApp is the key, and you can do a lot of things on the phone. Consumer trends, as you can imagine, depending on where you live, but I'm sure, people are extremely worried about the world we live in, inequalities, social issues, economic issues, ethical issues. So, if you have the right framework in place, you could impress the audience, which is, the future buyer. Mind to market model, personalization. We strongly believe if you could somehow identify the niche, personalize the product, you'll be wonderful. And this industry is about $1 trillion in market size. It's only increasing from now. There's a massive level of empathy for small businesses, for creatives, and I think there's a lot of interesting things that are going to come up as we kind of move on. So that people are looking at alternate non-big box purchases, including all of us who live in the UK as well. I mean, I've purchased things from small businesses this Christmas, which I would have never done before. So, really think about how things are changing and how do you make an opportunity out of it. Come and talk to us, basically. If you need anything that needs to be made, as long as it has a business case to it, we are more than happy to make it for you guys. And I think this is the last slide where we create, connect, and convert. What it fundamentally means is that if you're a small business, let's say in Dubai, and you're trying to kind of reach out and explore new partnerships, I would say focus on that. Build loyalty, build connections, make an impact, focus on sales, focus on reaching out to customers, and then I tell this to the manufacturers: you should be focusing on-time delivery, making it affordable, making it quick, making sure that your supply chain is treated properly, on addressing the needs of the customers. We as a fiduciary, we as a business, help you with the entire supply chain and the communication with different communities, ranging all the way from Britain to Bali, perhaps. And you could create like this next level of wonderful brands that you're trying to create for yourself. So this is the last slide. I'm more than happy to listen to you guys now. I think I've spoken for a good over an hour. My wife is going to be very happy because I think I'm done for the day. So throw me whatever questions you guys have. It's a bit of a shy sort of a setting.
Thank you so much, Konark. It was very informative and lots of information. I have some questions, but I want to see if somebody else, if somebody in the audience is having some question, you can either just ask or write in the chat, whatever is more convenient.
Actually, I have one question.
Mm-hmm.
When you talk about the design thinking process in like creating customized products, you kind of jumped the creating like 3D products before you actually send your design to the manufacturer or to the final stage. Do we have to kind of create after the 2D design, do we have to kind of create a 3D product in order to kind of see what the shape looks like, or to even approve some of the features, that kind of stuff, to test the product?
Oh yeah, I think a lot of there are a lot of softwares now that do that. So again, I think you could create a 3D model as well. Absolutely, you can pick and choose of different colors, Pantone, raw materials. So there are a bunch of different softwares that do that. So maybe I didn't show it to you, perhaps because it was a video that I had to show you. But yes, you're right, Hayat. I think you can create a 3D sort of a model. Keep in mind, right, with Handmade. Uh, it's very difficult to replicate what you see on the software versus the actual product, because it's just is very natural, right? It's very difficult to replicate a natural sort of a model. So a 3D is a good estimate of what it would look like, but there are a lot of inefficiencies when you talk about Handmade. They might be off by a good 2 to 5%, both in terms of dimensions and the finish. So yeah, so yeah, I mean, simple answer is yes, there are softwares. We do it as well, and maybe somebody wants to see it. I'm happy to show it to them as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Okay, I think probably Hassan can.
Yeah. Okay. I just had a question about the door-to-door delivery. So if a designer, because I think this would be mostly what designers or freelancers would like to have, a door-to-door delivery of their products. So the question is, because I think in some countries they do have, you need someone to clear the products for you, and you need to have I don't know, trade license or something, so you're able to trade the product or import code or something like that. So is there a solution for that, or how does it work in general?
Right. So I think that's a good one. Well, technically, the way this works is that you need to, when it says duty delivery paid, what it really does is it kind of will ask to the freight forwarder, the company like FedEx or DHL is going to ask you, where are you sending this? Let's say you're sending this in Dubai, because I'm going to ask you what are your company details. And as different countries have different regulations, you need to have all the paperwork with FedEx prior to clearing the shipment. And the same thing, depending on the country of origin, they also have to surrender and give all the documentations about the product, country of origin certificate, the raw materials, of the sustainable, ethical. There are a lot of different formulations, different things that are needed. So you need to have some sort of an entity. Now, if you're, this is obviously because you're bringing in products for commercial purposes. But if you're trying to bring samples, which is just one of a product, then it's a bit simpler. So you can just ship it like a personal use sort of a thing. But again, I'm not a subject matter expert in clearance, but I know that you need to have the very basic paperwork in place in the country of import. So it could be, it just varies depending on different countries.
Yeah. So if, for example, a designer is in Lebanon, for example, and they want to commission a design with you guys, okay, and then they sell it through your platform or through iDesign or whatever, Amazon even. So the delivery, how does that work to deliver their products to UK or to Dubai or to any other place? So for door-to-door delivery, it would be sent, I mean, directly to the client, or how does it work usually?
Yeah, so it will be sent directly to the client depending on their addresses. But as far as the clearance and stuff is concerned, as I said, you need to have all the necessary paperwork done prior to us sending the products. So if there's any certificate that is not there, what usually happens is that the custom officer in the country of import is going to keep it to the port till he's happy with all the documentation. And we have seen cases where you don't have clearance. There's no clearance for the product. So this then has to be sent back to the country of origin, right? So you need to have a business entity. Now, what usually happens, and a good example is Amazon. So what Amazon does is basically you ship it to their warehouse, which is how e-commerce really works. But even then, all the custom duties and the paperwork that you need needs to be in place, but you're just delivering this to the warehouse of Amazon, and then Amazon treats it as a local business. A lot of people that I know, what they do is they open up entities in different countries, again, depending on where you're trying to sell. So there are businesses that will open up entities in the US, in the UK, in France, and Germany, so that you can streamline the process and really kind of vertically integrate the entire supply chain. Now, for small business, for creatives, and I don't know much about how these people actually sell, but I'm assuming you still need a business, right, Hassan? Is that a correct thing to ask?
I think I think the most common thing is selling to end users directly. You know, I mean, commissioning a design idea and then selling it to end user directly.
But is there a business entity that manages that? How does that work? Like, who accepts the payments?
For us, we have. I mean, for example, for us, iDesign, we have the business entity, and we help also the users on our platform to sell through iDesign. But if they are selling in another place like Saudi or Kuwait or a different country, I don't know honestly how does it work.
Yeah. So well, I mean, so now I know it a little bit better now. So in this case, if you are becoming the business owner of the transaction, so you, the import will be on the iDesign's business name, and then you could then get them to pay for the products within the country, and then they can sell it off and make the money. But you, in this case, you will become the importing business basically.
Yeah, because also different countries has different, for example, customs and clearance charges, and yeah.
Correct. So you would be, so iDesign would be solely responsible for everything to do with customs and clearances, and any, if any fines or any duties that you have to pay, you would be liable for it. Yeah.
So anybody has questions, guys? I don't want to be the one asking all the time. Okay.
Feel free, guys. It's a very casual discussion, so don't feel shy or be restricted. Just go for it. Absolutely fine.
What's like how long would this whole thing take, like from drawing, sketching to actual product?
Right. So depending how easy or complex it is, let's say if I talk about furnitures, usually you can expect a good 30 to 60 days. But just be mindful, guys. I think when you start thinking of this, you got to think it from a long-term perspective. So 30 to 60 days easily. But in reality, you're always forecasting for the next 6 months, right? So the way this works is like Zara or all the big companies are already making winter 2022 collection, right? So you got to think in those terms. So you're not launching something for next month. You actually launch something for the next 6 months. And once you have a business, then you can always create products in advance for the next 6 months. So with that logic, you always become current.
Okay.
So technically it does take 30 to 60 days, but it's only the first time. After you have a business, you know what your customers need. You can keep improving designs and then always be current. Like Zara does 52 collections in a year, 52 collections in a year. They're just 52 weeks in a year.
Like ahead.
They're always thinking ahead. They're always thinking ahead. And 52 weeks, so they're creating a collection every single week. So, and quite honestly, if you think about what they're doing, they're really tapping into a very good supply chain. Right. I mean, people are so skilled. These people in Bangladesh are so skilled that they can create multiple variations of products. So really, thinking from a business perspective, wow, this is a great opportunity for you to do a business as well, in a different form, obviously. But yeah. What else?
Hi, Konark. I have a question regarding inventory. So, for example, let's say for a small business who doesn't have a massive amount of space of inventory here in the UK or anywhere else in the world, how can they navigate around that?
Yeah, this is way with a lot of difficulty to begin with. But see, managing inventory is is a hassle that you will always have. Simple solutions, as we've shown in the presentation, one is pre-orders. Pre-orders is the best thing, where you actually get a design made. So create a sample and then create a buzz around the product saying, this is a design, one of a kind. We're only going to make hundreds of them. But something similar to, if you guys have seen Kickstarter, Kickstarter, which is this very famous crowd-funded sort of a product design business. They raise X amount of money for a Y amount of products. So you can do something very similar. The second is, I would say, think about things that you're creating, how customizable they are. So we talked about the lampshades and the tables, right? So 5 colors of lampshades, 5 colors, 5 different like stands, makes it into 25 different products. So you don't really have to sell 25 different SKUs, but you can just say, these are the designs, and we can order whatever combination you need. So once you get the orders, you can tell the manufacturers to kind of, just marry 2 of them. This is another way of doing it. The problem with cross-border e-commerce is that you still need some sort of basic inventory, because as young creatives, you can't wait for 6 months. So there is some form of investment that you'll have to make. But the good news is, quite frankly, in the creative manufacturing and the handmade industry, just the way how decentralized the human capital is, you could make small batches. So you don't have to spend a bomb. I'll tell you, I'll give an example. I know a friend of mine, I won't say her name, but she spent a good 50,000 pounds with a Chinese factory to create something that she wanted, because there was nobody else ready to take anything smaller than that. And what happened to her? She was selling in John Lewis, very big brand in the UK, a lot of us know, which is a big retailer here. John Lewis couldn't really sell the product, because of whatever issues they had. She had 3,000 bags, or whatever, I don't know the exact number, maybe 3,000 or maybe whatever, 300, lying in the warehouse, because John Lewis said, I can't sell them, you take it back. Right, so you got to really think forward. You got to think about optimizing risks. And I'm more than happy, as a business, all of us are more than happy to speak to you if you have any specific problems. But I would say personalization, pre-booking, having a small batch to test the market could be the way forward.
Right. Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anything else, guys?
So I think if we don't have any more questions, okay.
Yeah.
Shall we conclude? I think so. I mean,
Yeah.
The workshop would be available on YouTube, and you can always, guys, reach us on iDesign's channel on YouTube, and you can always reach us or reach Rural, Handmade, and Konark or me directly anytime. Thank you, guys, and thank you, Konark, for the very informative workshop. I really appreciate it, and hopefully we'll see you guys in future workshops.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Austin, for your time. Thanks for everybody else joining as well. And we are more than happy to reach out to communicate and just work together. So good luck. Yeah, speak soon.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, bye.
Bye.